Today's topic is cardio, and I'm going to talk about the best options for equipment and modalities that you can use for your steady state zone 2 cardio. Before I get into the specifics, I want you to understand that the best piece of cardio equipment or the best cardio modality for you to use is one that you enjoy, one that fits your body and one that feels good to you. Because if you don't enjoy it, if it's uncomfortable, then you're not going to do it. So I want you to use this list to understand some pros and cons, but ultimately the best cardio modality is going to come down to one that you enjoy. The first two modalities I want to talk about don't require any equipment. We're going to start out with my favorite form of cardio at the moment, running. Running is great because it's probably the most accessible form of exercise in the world. The issue when it comes to running and steady state cardio is that it's really hard to stay in zone 2 for the entire duration of your run. Unless you're an elite runner, there's a good chance that you're going to spend most of your time in zone 3 and zone 4. Most of the people who go out their front door and they run a 5K, they're running at a level of intensity that puts them in zone 4, sometimes zone 5. And that doesn't mean that you're not getting any zone 2 benefits. If you do spend some time in zone 2, you're going to have those benefits regardless of if you spike up into zone 3 or zone 4. But it's not the most ideal to just lock in and get 60 minutes of straight up zone 2 cardio every single session. The next thing I want to talk about is swimming, because swimming is a really good form of exercise. But again, unless you are an elite swimmer, there's a good chance that you're going to be out of zone 2 for the majority of the time. The issue with swimming is that you're using a lot of muscles, your upper body and your lower body, to propel you forward, to keep you afloat. So you never find this smooth spot to where you're just cranking out in zone 2. There's a good chance that if you're using a lot of energy and you're probably going to be huffing and puffing, getting yourself closer to zone 3 and zone 4 throughout the swim, especially if you're not swimming in a lap pool. I remember when I used to swim in my parents' backyard, their pool was a decent size, but I'd be swimming from one end to the other, and then I would have to turn around after 10 to 15 yards, and I'm swimming in the waves and the splashes that I made on my way down, that I'm killing myself just to keep moving forward. So I was always way out of zone 2. Again, it's a great form of exercise, but probably not the best option for zone 2 or steady state cardio. Now let's move on to equipment. The treadmill is an amazing piece of equipment for zone 2. Usually if you're just walking on a flat treadmill, it's probably going to be a little bit too easy of an effort to get you into zone 2. Similarly, if you're just walking around your neighborhood, you're probably not getting into zone 2. It's good exercise, it's extra movement, it's good steps, but it's not cardio. So the benefit of a treadmill is you can bump that incline up a little bit, which is going to increase the effort, and it's going to allow you to hit that pace that's going to keep you in your steady state zone 2 level of intensity that you're looking for. So when you increase the incline, you want to start to get a little bit out of breath, but not so out of breath that you can't hold a conversation. You want to start to break a little bit of a sweat. You feel like your body's getting nice and warm, but you're not just leaking sweat all over the place. You're not making so much of an effort that you're feeling exhausted. Think of it this way: when you're doing your zone 2, if you do a 60-minute session, you're more than likely going to be more bored than you are tired at the end of it. And the treadmill is a great way to get into that steady state zone 2 for 40 to 60 minutes. The cons of a treadmill are that if you have one at your house, they usually take up a lot of space and they're also really expensive. On the other hand, you can have the cheapest of gym memberships and there's a good chance that they're going to have a decent treadmill for you to get your incline walk in and knock out some really beneficial zone 2 training. Next, my second favorite form of cardio is an Airdyne or an Echo bike. These are really, really good because they're challenging, but not so challenging that you can't knock out a good amount of zone 2 on them. You're using your lower body and you're using your upper body, so you're not just taxing one muscle group so much that you're not able to find a groove and get into that zone 2. So you can go for a nice easy ride. You can even do it while you're watching TV, listening to a podcast, listening to an audiobook, getting a good workout in, spending 45 to 60 minutes. The downside is anything over 60 minutes and it really sucks. The Airdyne is not fun to do over 60 minutes. But on that note, 60 minutes is a good time cap for an individual training session for zone 2. If you can do 2 or 3 of those a week, you're going to be more than good with the amount of zone 2 that you should be doing. The other downside, same as a treadmill, if you're looking for a home gym piece of equipment, the Airdyne and the Echo bikes are pretty expensive, but I think they're totally worth it. They take up a little bit less space than a treadmill, except for when you fold the treadmill up, it's probably a little bit more compact as opposed to the Airdyne. It is what it is, but I do prefer it over the treadmill. I love hopping on the Airdyne, knocking out 40 minutes of easy zone 2, and then moving on with my day. The other type of bike would be a stationary bike or a recumbent bike. These are also, a recumbent bike is pretty expensive, so it might not be the best option for a home gym, but again, almost every gym in the world has a stationary bike and a recumbent bike. I can't really think of any downsides to using these for cardio. They are very beneficial. You can adjust the seats, you can adjust the intensity. Great way to increase that heart rate, get your heart pumping, be a little bit out of breath, but not so out of breath that you can't hold a conversation. Next, let's talk about rowers. Personally, I don't like a rower for zone 2 cardio. Again, it's something that I can't spend more than like 5 minutes on a rower at a time, or I'm just losing my mind. I'm not saying that it isn't effective for zone 2 steady state cardio, but it's just boring and uncomfortable to be on a rower for longer than 5 or 10 minutes, unless you're somebody who went to school or went to college and you were on the rowing team. You're probably used to sitting on those things for 60 minutes. But if you ever notice like CrossFit classes or any HIIT class that uses a rower, there's a good chance that they do like 30-second sprints and then they're off. Or it's a like row 200 meters as fast as you can and then hop off. Very rarely are trainers, coaches, group classes using rowers for extended periods of time. So as far as a 30 to 60 minute steady state cardio session, they're not my favorite. As far as a home gym goes, they do take up a decent amount of space, but you can flip them upright, get them out of the way, just like a treadmill. But then you have this piece of equipment that is almost as high as your ceiling. I don't like things that are that big, that cumbersome. I feel like I'm surrounded by something that's going to fall on top of me. So I don't love the rower, but again, a lot of gyms have them these days. Another popular piece of cardio equipment is the elliptical. And I think the elliptical gets a bad name, but it can be really beneficial. If you enjoy the elliptical, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I feel like I'm repeating myself here with cost, and I think I'll just say across the board, cardio equipment is expensive if you're buying it on your own. At the same time, every gym is usually loaded with cardio equipment. Even if you're traveling, most hotels have a treadmill, a stationary bike, and an elliptical of some sort. The elliptical, it's really good. You're using your upper body, you're using your lower body, but it's not so taxing that it's going to fatigue any of those body parts so much that you can't continue to stay in the groove getting your zone 2 in. For me, I don't like the elliptical. It's uncomfortable for me, so I don't use it. And that's why, going back to what I said at the beginning, what's comfortable to you and what you enjoy matters. So just because I don't use it, I'm not going to say that it's a bad piece of equipment. It's a perfectly fine piece of equipment. If it's something that you can stay on for 30 to 60 minutes, by all means, rock it out. Next, let's talk about the StairMaster, a very popular piece of equipment. I would say that this is probably the only bad option that I'm talking about as far as pieces of cardio equipment. The issue with the StairMaster is it is going to smoke your legs almost instantaneously, and you're not going to be able to move at a steady enough pace to get into a groove to stay in zone 2. So yeah, your legs are going to be smoked, but you're not pushing your heart to the point where you're going to be getting the adaptations of steady state cardio that you're looking for. I can't tell you how many times I go into the gym and I see somebody basically hanging over the top of the StairMaster because their legs are absolutely smoked. They're never even close to being out of breath. They can always carry a conversation, but their legs are just destroyed. And it's kind of the same thing if you are walking up and down stairs, or if you're going up a flight of stairs. Yeah, you might be a little bit out of breath, but your legs are gassed, and that's the downside of a StairMaster. So it's usually at the bottom of the list for recommendations that I give my clients when I'm telling them to get X amount of cardio in per week. It's usually the last thing that I would recommend. Those are the main pieces of cardio equipment that you're going to find at the gym, but I want to talk about a couple of other things that people use for cardio because I think they're overrated, frankly. Something like the battle ropes or the jump rope. I love the jump rope, and I actually have always really liked battle ropes, but the issue with these types of equipment is that you can't do them long enough to consider them steady state cardio. If you think about battle ropes, it's usually in a HIIT setting, and that's great for HIIT cardio, but it's not good for steady state cardio. Nobody is literally just waving and slamming ropes for 30 to 60 minutes straight. So right off the bat, I do not recommend battle ropes for steady state cardio. On the subject of the jump rope, it's kind of the same thing. Unless you're an elite athlete or a professional boxer, there's a good chance that you're not just jumping rope for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, let alone 60 minutes. You're probably going to jump rope for a minute, you mess up, you regroup, you jump rope for 30 seconds, you mess up, you regroup, and then you keep going. It's a good option for some sort of interval training, but for steady state cardio, where you are literally maintaining a steady state of effort or intensity, it's not the best option. It's really cool. You can travel with a jump rope. You can bring it on vacation with you so you can, use it to get your heart rate up, but it's not going to be as good of a steady state cardio option as something like the treadmill with an incline, a stationary bike, or an elliptical. Another thing worth noting is that if you want to combine cardio modalities, that's perfectly fine. So if you're doing a 60-minute zone 2 workout and you want to do 30 minutes on a stationary bike and 30 minutes on an elliptical, that is perfectly fine. You can split up your 60 minutes however you want. The only thing that I suggest is that you take your first 10 minutes and use that as a warm-up, and then any amount of time after that is going to be what's called your effective zone 2 training. And if you're wondering how much zone 2 training should I be doing per week, my recommendation would be anywhere from 90 to 120 minutes of effective zone 2 cardio per week. And remember, that is discounting the first 10 minutes of each session. And then if you want to talk about high intensity training, something more like zone 4 or zone 5 training, shoot for between 20 to 30 minutes per week of high intensity training, whether you take a HIIT class or you do some sprints outside or on the treadmill. There you have it. Now you can figure out what modality is best for you to get your steady state zone 2 cardio in, and you know exactly how much you should be doing each week. If you found this video helpful, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, and if you want more information on fitness and nutrition, make sure to subscribe to my channel.